My answer to this is one that doesn't really make anybody happy because I don't think that Israel has the right to exist. I don't think that any country has the right to exist.
Hello, you guys, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Baka Project. Now, today we're going to be discussing a very interesting video that just came out by Matt Walsh. It is someone I actually do subscribe to. I do listen to a lot of what he has to say, and I do like his perspective. In fact, it's helped me with a lot of serious issues like the LGBT stuff, and how giving me a better perspective on that, on race. Two of his most famous movies are What is a Woman and Am I Racist? Great movies, but great documentaries, wonderful perspective, things to be able to think about and listen to. And he does bring a lot of good clarity when it comes to these issues. Now, one of his issues is that he's become somewhat of an isolationist. It seems like, especially after Charlie passed, that he didn't want to step on any toes of any conservative. So what he took was more of a libertarian type perspective. Now, I understand that he believes in this wholly. But, and I listened to it. I could probably make a pretty good argument based on what he says. But after listening to this last one, I was like, no, we got to bring some clarity to this subject because this is getting out of hand. So with that said, we're going to jump right into it. We're going to watch a little bit of what he has to say, and we'll talk about it, and I'll commentate through it, and I can show you the flaws and the holes in his logic. So tune in. Here we go.
At least related to it. Much of the conversation can circle around this question: does Israel have a right to exist? And I just want to say that from my perspective, the whole question, the whole debate really is based off false premise. And my answer to this is one that doesn't really make anybody happy because I don't think that Israel has the right to exist. I don't think that any country has the right to exist.
Okay, so we're going to jump right into that. There is more that we can talk about, but I want to talk about this specifically. Now, I agree with Matt on his premise. I agree when he says that, countries don't just have the right to exist. This is not something that we just naturally have. Is because we exist, we have the right to exist. Okay? I don't believe in that. But when it comes to Israel, I do. Israel is not a country that was just taken over and started by a bunch of Jews. Israel was given and was promised by God, hence why it's called the Promised Land in the Bible. So my concern with Matt Walsh is not about his logic. His logic makes sense. And he's fair across the board. I can agree with that. I think that his thinking on this, his belief in this is a bit lazy, though. It's very lazy. Because if you make an argument one way or the other, that means you have to have a logical conclusion or reason behind your argument. And he doesn't want to have one. He just wants to say, well, I agree with that across the board. That's it. Leave me alone. I don't want to talk about it. That's what it seems like to me. But in all reality, that also means that you're rejecting your book. As a Catholic, you believe in the Bible, and you believe in the Apocrypha as well. So you have a lot of Jewishness in your belief system, or at least in your doctrine, I should say. You also believe in sola scriptura, which means that the Bible is the final say. There is no authority above the Bible. Now, in Catholic practices and doctrines, they also believe the Pope can be inerrant. That's a whole other conversation. But what I'm trying to say is that if you believe in the Hebrew scriptures, the Hebrew Bible, and that's not just the Old Testament, that's also the New Testament. In case you didn't know, the majority, if not all of the Bible, was written by Jews. And the majority of the Bible is written about Jews. One very common thread through the Old Testament, if not the most common thread, is that Israel belongs to the Jewish people. And only God can give it, and only God can take it away. So when you're talking about where do you get your rights from, which we'll get into in just a second, the right comes from God. The same logic you use to protect an innocent child in the womb from abortion, you have to use that same logic to protect the Jewish land known as Israel. You have to, because that right, both of them were given by God. The right to life and the right to existence were given by God. So when you sit there and you say Israel doesn't have a right to exist, well, now your logic can't work because it would have to go across the board. Well, the humans don't have a right to exist. People don't have a right to freedom. People don't have a right to believe in what they believe in. People no longer have rights using your logic. Because if I were to ask you and say, where do people get their rights from? You would say, God. And I would agree with you wholeheartedly. But that also means that Israel has a right to exist because they get that from God. And it's the only country in the world that has that right given to them by God. So it is different. And it is going to take a bit more mental exercise and being able to communicate that thought. And so you're going to have to study that book to understand it. But it is one that you have to have a right understanding on to be able to be accurate in this situation. So let's jump in. Let's continue.
I don't think there's any country that we could look at and say they have a right to exist. And let me explain what I mean by that. So first, I think you have to define your terms, not to be pedantic, but in this case, it's not. What do we mean by right? We really got to, this is a word that comes up a lot in our debates about any topic. Any topic, it always comes back to someone making a rights claim. I have a right to this, I have a right to that. Well, what do you mean by that? What does that mean? What does that mean? And I think very often the people that are talking about it, using the term, I have a right to it, they really have no, if you were to ask them, but what do you mean you have a right to it? Like, where do you get that right? Where does that come from? They wouldn't be able to tell you. So what does that mean?
Going into this again, like I was saying before, is that he's saying, well, if you were to ask him, where do you get that right from? And they wouldn't be able to tell you. Now, the question I'd have is, Matt, why don't you tell us where we get that right from? What don't you say? Because in all reality, you actually can't say it. Because if you say, or at least unless you're just completely ignorant of the Bible, but if you're not ignorant of the Bible, you can't say that we get that right from God, because you would know that Israel gets its right to exist in that very land from the same God. So that is where the cognitive dissonance is going to begin for you in your belief system. And I will say to you, man, if you don't choose right or left on this one, then you're going to be in a dangerous place, and you're most likely going to start veering to the left with the Candace Owen and the Tucker Carlson. Now, I know this conversation that you're having right here is actually in reaction to Tucker Carlson talking to Mike Huckabee. I haven't watched the entire interview. I probably will, and I'm going to be talking about it soon. But the problem with Tucker Carlson, the few moments I have seen, is that he was very aggressive with Mike Huckabee and very disrespectful. And he's not like that with Muslims that are supporting massacring people, and not just Jewish people, Christians, anyone that doesn't subject themselves to Islam. He's comfortable talking to people like Nick Fuentes, where this guy is total like white supremacist, neo-Nazi, hates the Jews, hates the blacks, hates women. I mean, this guy's a psychopath, and he's kind as cucumber to this guy. When it comes to Mike Huckabee, a respected politician, an ambassador for our country, and a Christian man, a man that's supposedly believes in the same system that Tucker believes in when he calls himself a Christian, and yet he's violently disrespectful. And yet you're going to sit here and you're going to play the middle ground with this guy? You're crazy, Matt. I have a lot of respect for you, a lot of respect for all the things you've done and all the things you talk about. This is not one of those things. I think you're lazy on this, and I think that you're scared. I think you're scared of choosing a side, and you can't be scared of choosing a side on this issue. You just can't. Unfortunately, it is a big issue. And it's probably one of the most important social issues, religious issues, spiritual issues you're ever going to deal with. It just is. And it's going to keep coming around. It's not going anywhere. We could stop abortion today. I hope we do. We could stop the LGBT stuff today. I hope we do. And there could be peace in the Middle East today. And gosh, I hope there is. But Israel will still be a topic of conversation. It will still be a problem. It's always been a problem. Now, you might say, well, the Jewish people aren't, the government's doing wrong things. The military's killing X, Y, Z. All these different things that you can say about Israel. Well, are they really the promised land? Are they really Israel? Are they really this? Are they really that? If that is really your questioning and really your way of thinking on it, you haven't read the Bible. Because the thing is, in the Bible, that happened over and over and over again. That's all that happened. Israel would get right with God, would do everything wrong, God would send in a judge. It got worse and worse and worse. Then God sent in a king. Even though he said, I'm your king, and they said, no, we want our own king. We want a physical man. It got worse and worse and worse and worse. And then he sent in the prophets, and they killed all the prophets. It got worse and worse and worse. And then he sent in himself in human form through his son, Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach. He sent him in, and then he was killed. It's only gotten worse. And the thing is that's what happened, but it's not Israel. It's just mankind. It's just a reflection on what happens everywhere in the world. And if it was any other country in the world, they would have done the same thing, if not worse. You have to understand, God not only knew what was happening when it was happening, but knew it would happen way before it happened. He still chose Israel. He still chose the people to be in that chosen land at the chosen times that they were in there. And when he didn't want them there, he cast them out. He exiled them. That's because God's in control. God chose the land. The Jewish people could have been set up in any other land. They could have been in Jordan. They could have been in Lebanon. They could have been in Syria. They could have been in Egypt. They could have been so many other places. Yet, he chose for them to be in that tiny little country. And you're telling me they don't have a right? Where do you get your rights from, Matt Walsh? Because if you tell me you get your rights from God, which God? You want to say the God of the Bible? Well, then your logic doesn't add up, man. It just doesn't add up anymore. Because the same God, the God of the Bible, is who gave the Jewish people their rights to exist in that land irrevocably. It was his covenant to them, irrevocably. He will not revoke the right of them being in that land unless he pulls them out for a time. That's it. And it's foolish to think otherwise. It's unbiblical, unchristian, and it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong to think any other way. And he's going to go on and talk about his kids and everything like this. I understand his logic, but that's the thing. This is where a level of gaslighting is happening. And I think he's gaslighting himself, to be honest. I think he's being genuine. I don't think that he's actually intentionally manipulating you as the viewer, but I do think he's gaslighting in this because he won't admit that rights come from God. And he is one that never evades this subject. He doesn't evade God in life. He doesn't evade religion. He talks about the Christian perspective. He makes it very clear he's Catholic, which I don't agree with a lot of the Catholic stuff, but nevertheless, he makes it very clear that he believes that the Bible is the truth and that Bible is right, but he won't admit that rights come from God. They only come from God, and they don't come from anywhere else. They just don't.
And the people that are talking about it, using the term, I have a right to it, they really have if you were to ask them, but what do you mean you have a right to it? Like, where do you get that right? Where does that come from? They wouldn't be able to tell you. So to me, I think the word right means an entitlement. That's what a right is. You are entitled to something.
And that's absolutely correct. They are entitled to that land. because they were given it by God. And that's the part you can't address, is that the Jewish people were given the right to a land. They were given the entitlement to live in this land by God himself. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that Jews or Jewish people or just singular Jew comes from the ancient Hebrew word Yehudim. Yehudim means the people that worship Yehovah, or Yehovah's people. And Yehovah is the name of God. As most of you may know, you probably heard it as Jehovah. Bad translation, another conversation for another day. But basically, Yehovah gave his people, the Yehudim, the right to live in this land. And that's all that's happening. They're entitled to the land because God, the creator God, the ancient one, gave the right to these specific people to live and to be in this specific land. And people like Matt Walsh can't take the stand. And that's the problem. You want to take a stand like Candace and say all Jews are evil, they all need to, be unaligned, they need to go away, all these things. Take that stand. I have a lot of respect for you, Matt Walsh, but this stand right here, this, in my opinion, lazy, intellectually, spiritually, theologically, lazy stand, there's no respect for this. No respect at all. Take your crazy stand. Go in the crazy crowd with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. You want to be a murderous psychopath with them? Go over with them. At least take a stand, though. Because if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for you're going to fall for anything. You're going to fall for their stuff, more than likely. Or take a stand on your Bible. Because your Bible, even with the Apocrypha, your Catholic Bible, will tell you that God gave a specific people a specific land. And I don't know why, but you just don't like that. Maybe you're scared. And maybe that's very accurate. Maybe you're scared. I don't paint you as someone that's scared. I don't paint you as someone that gets easily afraid of taking a hard stand on something based on who you are and what you've done. But for some reason, you're not taking a stand on this one. And this is a very crucial issue.
Right to something means I am entitled to it. And if we don't mean, when we say right, if we don't mean entitled, then I don't know what we mean. So if you object to my definition of right, then you got to tell me what yours is, because
No, I don't object. That's the definition of right. That's what I mean when I say that Israel has the right to exist. It's entitled to exist. That's what I mean. The definition's there. The logic, it's there, but the facts are not right. The facts are wrong. And that's what you need to understand, Matt Walsh. The facts are wrong. Your logic's right. Countries don't just have a right to exist because they exist. I agree. 100%. Except Israel. And that's the problem. Because you won't stand up on your Bible that says Israel has a right to exist in the place where it exists, the land in which God's name is engraved. And you won't take that stand.
As far as I can tell, that's what we mean. When someone talks about right, they say, when someone says they have a right to something, they are saying they are entitled to it. So for example, and you can be entitled to things like if you have a contract with your employer, let's say, you have a right to the compensation outlined in your contract. You have a right to it. You are entitled to it. Those words mean the same thing. You can rightfully say, I'm entitled to that. I have a right to that. It's not just about contracts. My kids have a right to be cared for. So fed, protected. They are entitled to that. They have a right to it. They are entitled to it, both legally and morally.
I 100% agree with you, Matt. I 100% agree with you. And I'm glad you brought up those two things, because a contract is basically this, just to make it really simple, is I will do this if you do this. If I don't do this, you don't have to do this. If you don't do this, I don't have to do this. It is a contingency within the contract, meaning the contract can be broken. Now, a covenant is very different. It's, I will do this regardless if you do this. And you will do this regardless if I do this. It is a covenant. And it can be a two-way or a one-way. Now, God made a covenant, not a contract, a covenant with the Jewish people, with the Israelites, Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments, and he made a covenant that this land belongs to them. He made that same covenant with Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham. And he told them that their descendants would live in a specific land, the land of Canaan. He made a covenant, an irrevocable covenant with them that cannot be broken. Now, that's the covenant side. I also want to talk about the children's side. You're right. Morally, legally, spiritually, theologically, any other way, your children have a right to be protected, taken care of, nourished, fed, clothed, housed, taken care of, all encompassing by you as their father because they are your children. Now, the Israelites were called the children of God, the children of Jehovah. And what's really interesting is if you read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, if you read them, which I don't doubt that you did, if you read them, you will notice that Jesus always says, my Father. Now, why they thought that was weird is that they didn't call God my Father, they called him the Father. But they still referred to him as Father because he still referred to them as sons. It was a relationship with not only a covenant, but a relationship of father and son. And so that's the big difference, is that Israel is the children of God. Whether you like it, I like it, or anyone likes it or not, these are just facts. And that's why they have the right to be housed, to be fed, and to be protected, just like any child has the right to those things from their father. That's all it is. It's simple. But for some reason, you don't go there. And you have to. In the position that you're in, as a conservative voice that stands up for truth, so many great subjects, this is one that you fail miserably on. And this is bad. It's really bad because it's going to start eroding other things that you take such a strong stand on. It just is. That's just the reality of it. So I do appreciate you guys watching this video. Please, if you liked it, say something in the comments. Let me know whether you liked it or not. If you agree or disagree, let me know. I would love to address that. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Helps grow the channel. Helps spread the truth about the things that are going on in this world. I definitely want to help people have a better understanding of what's going on in church. I will venture a little bit into politics, not much, but a little bit. But most importantly, helping us have a clear, more broad understanding of the Bible, because it is the most important subject that we have to understand. So thank you once again, and I hope you have a blessed day. See you next time.